You're listening to the OCD Stories podcast, hosted by me, Stuart Ralph. The OCD Stories is a podcast dedicated to raising awareness and understanding around obsessive-compulsive symptoms. I do this through interviewing inspired therapists, psychologists, and people who have experienced OCD. Welcome to the OCD Stories. And welcome to this midweek special episode in which I chat with Ethan Smith and Dr. Jonathan Hoffman of the Neurobehavioral Institute in Florida. We discuss aha moments, Ethan's story and his aha moments of all kinds, pseudo aha moments, the catalysts for an aha moment, whether people need them, and much more. And these midweek special episodes, which go out at the end of the month on a Wednesday, are made possible by and in partnership with the Neurobehavioral Institute in Florida, or NBI for short. I will be interviewing different members of their clinical team on a range of topics. NBI specialise in treatment and programs for anxiety, OCD, comorbidities, and complex cases. They also offer an intensive outpatient program and a residential program called the NBI Ranch, a supportive living experience that complements intensive treatment for anxiety and obsessive-compulsive related disorders. To find out more about their intensive outpatient services or the NBI Ranch, as well as to read some of their free information online about OCD via their blog, visit nbiwestern.com. And thank you to you guys for listening. As always, it means a lot. And thank you to Ethan and John for their time. And without further ado, here they are. Welcome back to the show, John and Ethan.
Hello. Thanks so much, Stu.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on. I'm still paranoid every time I say your name, Ethan.
You just said it.
Yeah, did I say it right or wrong? Or
no, you said it the best way possible. Okay, it's a good story.
My way.
Yes. Yeah. Stephen Smith and I still joke about, we call each other Stepham and Epham. So in honor of you, every time to this day, all our texts are STEFUM and EFUM. So
yeah, I don't know if it's a British thing or it's just me, but people pull me up on how I say therapy as opposed to, I'm not even going to try, but anyway, so I'm always
trying the TH is the F. Yeah. Epham. I love Epham. I'll take it all the time. Yeah.
Nice. But John's easy to say. I don't think
that doesn't have a lot of challenges.
It's hard to mess that one up. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's get into it. So today we're going to talk about aha moments. Yeah. So maybe initially we start with what is an aha moment?
Well, I guess if you look to like a dictionary definition of an aha moment, it's a sudden burst of realization, of insight, and a kind of a call for like a radical change, something that's transformative. And I think whether that's the case or not is something we're here to discuss, and whether that's the case or not and how it applies to OCD and related conditions more specifically.
Yeah. And Ethan, from your side of things, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I had an aha moment just now where it's like, perhaps you're the only one saying my name correctly, and everyone else is wrong. So, and I think that could be very valid, Yeah. I think that,
well, Ethan, can I suggest that you just hit on something really important, because an aha moment can be an OCD moment too. Isn't an aha moment when a compulsion is completed as well, like aha, or just an moment, or it can be a moment that actually, is a positive thing or a negative thing. Because we can be fooled by insight, we can be fooled by relief. And that's why discussing these issues in the context of OCD really has a lot of nuances and a lot of depth to it. So I'm so glad to have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I agree, John. I think for me, the original intent of, my aha moment was really in regards to progressing through therapy in an effective and positive way. While being in residential treatment, watching people thrive and flourish, as they move through their behavioral treatment plan, and me feeling very stagnant and stuck despite me doing the work. I was very confused about why I wasn't getting better and other people were. And I think it's a very common thing in OCD treatment is people easily compare to one another and go, well, that person's getting better, I'm not. My OCD is worse. My brain is more broken. I have a more difficult case. And this was definitely, the situation for me. I couldn't understand why I understood science and the logic behind the treatment, but despite best efforts to put it into practice, I wasn't seeing results. And it wasn't until, later on in my little later on in my journey where I was put into an intervention situation where I like to say my big aha moment came in my treatment, where suddenly I realized that no one was going to help me but me. So this is, I think, without getting too heavily into my story, but really, really sick with OCD, riddled, bedridden, unable to function, and went to NBI in 2010, and eventually went to residential after that. They were preparing me for residential, and despite best efforts in residential, actually got kicked out because I was really giving in to my OCD and compulsing in very big ways. They still offered to support, but I got put in a situation where I was kind of left on my own to either employ the skills and tools that I had been taught or not. And this is kind of where my big aha moment came, where I was laying in bed, choosing not to function and participate in life out of fear that I would be hurt, because my OCD was telling me, if you do these things, then you're going to get hurt. And having the realization that the OCD was hurting me way worse than any decision I could make to live. But even more importantly, this concept that no one was coming to save me. I think I, in therapy, had always hoped that, somebody would just feed me a silver bullet. That sounds really violent, but I didn't mean like in the literal sense. I meant like, I really, like when I went to see John and Katya, I thought one day they would walk in and fix me. What does that mean? And I think in that moment of being in that house and lying there and realizing the only person that can make a change is me. No one's coming for me. No one's calling me. No one's paying my bills. No one's feeding me. I really had, the onus was on me. And that was such a huge aha moment to realize, oh, I have to do this myself. And I know that seems so logical and obvious. Like, of course you have to do it yourself. But I think when you're struggling and you're vulnerable and you're so desperate for help, it's like fix me. Like when you go to a doctor, they're doing the surgery. So it's like, well, who's going to do what to me to make me better, was my mindset. So to have an aha moment where it was like, no, I have to take the steps. I have to walk toward the fire, and be willing to get burned a little bit, because the alternative is certain death. Not to be over dramatic, but to have my life very much taken away by OCD. So that was, the preeminent aha moment in my life, which really changed the trajectory and course of my own treatment and regaining my life back. There's been multiple aha moments and aha moments and aha moments since then. But for me, that's kind of the piece that started my wellness journey, and also the piece that sort of initiated this conversation around, how can we find our aha moment? And does it take reaching rock bottom, and being put in a dire situation to find that moment? Or can you find it at any time? And what does that look like?
So, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ethan. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it was when you got kicked out the residential. So that's not NBI, just to clarify for anyone listening. It was the residential place you went to after NBI. They kicked you out for various reasons. And then you were, I believe from your story, you were stuck in a flat or something. And yeah. So I guess to clarify, one is, was that the kind of, like you said, no one's coming. It's the worst it's ever been. It's me or nothing now. I have to do it. So just to clarify that. The other thing was, I can imagine people listening being like, oh my God, they kicked him out when he was really suffering. How could they? So I guess I just wanted you to clarify. I'm sure it was maybe the right thing for them to do.
100%. It was definitely out of love. It was well-deserved. Because I was disrupting a lot of treatment for other folks, but also it was spearheaded and managed by not only the residential program that I was at, but NBI as well. They coordinated, they worked together in conjunction to say, how can we help Ethan? Despite all of these best efforts, he's still not responding. How can we get him to understand and put his skills into practice? And so it was very much not a matter of kick Ethan to the curb, he's not working out. Is very much a matter of, let's put Ethan in a situation where life is more important than the OCD, and offer him treatment through this program, they still said, hey, you can come to treatment 3 days a week. We'll support you, but you have to come to us. You have to make the effort. We can't keep dragging you along. You have to meet us halfway. So it was very much a situation of love and out of kindness, and people really trying to figure out in a creative way how to get me to shift and make that change. So yeah, no, nobody gave up on me. Nobody kicked me to the curb with my sickness. That's how I personally felt, right? Because I wanted that accommodation and that relief. But it was the complete opposite, actually. It was a group of individuals, both at NBI and this residential program, unwilling to give up on me and truly believing that I could get better. And it was a really, in retrospect, one of the most beautiful things that could have ever happened to me, despite feeling totally icky in the moment.
Yeah, and one more quick
I'd like
question.
to mention that, if that's okay, that this was kind of an aha moment induction strategy. I guess we're calling it that in retrospect, because I guess we weren't using that language. But it's interesting that what this kind of an aha moment really kind of also speaks to is that many people with OCD look to other people to have their aha moments for them. In a similar way that people with ADHD look for people to be their executive functioning, or not intentionally, it just becomes part of the process. So reassurance seeking, accommodations really are actually exporting ahas to other people. And what Ethan is describing is that without the scaffolding, he had the opportunity anyway to have an aha moment, which well-intentioned people often are, because it's like doing your kid's homework for them or something like that. They're actually not realizing it, but they're depriving a person of the circumstances, of the opportunity to actually have their own aha moment.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And Ethan, when you did get kicked out, so to speak, obviously they were still there supporting you in some capacity, but how long did it take for you to for it to kind of click, for the aha to happen, and for you to maybe re-engage in that 3-day-a-week program?
I appreciate you delving in. I always assume people have heard and don't want to hear it again, so I default to the quick rendition. It got pretty dire. So when I got kicked out, I found a place on Craigslist, which was the hot ticket at the time. And I found a pretty shifty place to live. I was only given a certain amount of money to start my life. And kind of like, you need to make a life here in this brand new city in the middle of winter. Good luck. And if you do this, we'll continue seeing you, but you have to get a job and make a living and meet new people, and you don't have a car. And I was just like, well, what is going on right now? It was very intimidating for somebody that had been, more or less taken care of by their family, their whole life, and enabled and accommodated, their OCD very much. So I went into this house, and it was in a pretty seedy part of town because it's all I could afford. And I was terrified. There were like 8 or 9 people living in this house, and I rented a room in it. And I went into the room, and I actually pushed a bookcase against the door because I was afraid that something bad was going to happen to me or whatever. In retrospect, it probably wasn't as dangerous as my mind thinks it is. But, for me, I got into bed and I just stopped functioning again. I just literally stopped eating, stopped drinking, didn't take care of myself, and was like, I had the mindset that I'd had before, which is if I just lay here, people will take, it'll figure itself out. What I realized after 2 or 3 days was no one was coming. My phone wasn't ringing. No one was answering. No one was paying my bills. No one was knocking on my door. No one was bringing me food. No one was checking on me. Everything had been stripped. And I kind of went from, I hate to use this word because it's a disease, and I don't know, maybe John can correct me, but I kind of went from a victim mentality of like, I have this disease and disorder, I need to be fixed, to no, I need to be the hero of my own story. I need to come out of the hero's journey and come out of the descent into darkness and make moves for myself. And I realized oh, I have to make this really hard decision where I need to move through this big fire that's super scary. The specific aha moment for me, though, was the thinking that if I continue to choose this path, I may actually lose my life, which was my fear. Not eating, not drinking, not taking care of myself, just letting me wither away. I know that's hard to picture now, but It was that, or do I take a risk? And suddenly, in this situation, the risk, which before seemed too dangerous to take, get up, do something value driven, get food, grocery store, haircut, live your life. That seemed too risky before. What if I hurt myself? What if I accidentally hit my head, my fear at the time? But suddenly in this situation, that risk was extremely promising because the certainty in this moment lied in the decision not to do anything. There, the certainty was I would lose my life. If I chose to move, well, then there's a risk, but there was also a reward. What if I do survive? What if I do make it through? What if my fears don't happen? And so that was the true specific aha moment when I went, you know what? I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to roll the dice, and maybe I will get burned to a crisp, or maybe I won't. And just to clarify, I don't want to speak too long. It wasn't an aha moment where my cat is like just crying outside my door. It wasn't an aha moment where I went, oh, I need to take a risk. And then I jumped out of bed and I skipped down the road and the sun was shining bright. Like this was a multi-month process of like re-engaging in life and crying every day and talking to my therapist and melting down on the floor, But the aha moment started with, I need to take ownership of my life and move forward in a value-driven way and take the risk.
No, I'd like to translate this, not correct, of course, Ethan, but actually translate it into a clinical concept so that it can be used by other people as well, so they can just kind of like hone on what's important. And it's a very interesting thing to think about the difference between responsibility and accountability. So, no one could ever say that anyone is responsible for having OCD. It's a no fault kind of thing. But at the same time, are people accountable for doing something about it? And I find it fascinating that over responsibility, and we know that that's a core issue in OCD, is actually very much correlated with under accountability. And I think that's a very interesting dimension. And again, what Ethan is describing, to the way I'm hearing it, is going from making that transition, or to taking personal accountability and not letting the over responsibility, which is symptomatic of a core symptom of OCD, actually be the dominating factor in his decision making.
That's interesting. Does that make sense, Ethan, from your side?
Yeah, I definitely think it does. The only amendment I would make to that, and I do it humbly, as John is a brilliant therapist and I am but a lowly sufferer. But I always struggle with this idea of accountability and like, this is a disease, this is a disorder, yet I have a choice. That's always been such a strange dichotomy to me, because it's like, well, if I have a choice and I relapse or I struggle, well, then that's my choice to struggle, but it's a disease. I've always struggled with that. I think that my piece is, accountability. For me, accountability kicks in when education is there. I think once we're educated to what OCD is, we're educated to the treatment, we understand what that looks like, and we have a foundation of skills and tools. I think that's when accountability becomes part of the process. I think before that, we don't know what we don't know. How can we be accountable when we have no skills or tools in our tool belt? And I know I wasn't alluding that you were thinking that, John, or saying that.
No, I think that's really interesting. But I do want to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you had a lot of education about OCD.
Oh, 100%. I was just speaking.
I'm just saying that, yes, education, of course, is very, very important. But even when people are, really, really educated about OCD, they may not make a change in the absence of kind of being in the crucible where they kind of have to, or they feel they have to, or it's induced in some way, or there's many ways to get out this. Sometimes aha moments are really imposed a little bit, in your case, sometimes they're a combination, and I think I'd like to speak to that issue of kind of saying, well, what's our, responsibility and accountability? Is it a disease, is it a disorder? How can I be held responsible? And I think actually what I would suggest that people think about anyway is transcending that question. That seems to me to be a rabbit hole question, because you never know the answer to that. The way to say it, I think, is whether it is or it's not, whatever it is, I'm going to take accountability for doing the best I can within the circumstances. Because I think people, and especially people with OCD, can get caught in figuring out stuff rather than kind of taking a stand. And that's the only thing I would say about that. But I certainly understand where you're coming from with that. And it is a question that many people kind of ruminate about, but I'm not sure it's an answerable question in any case, or a productive one.
Yeah, I don't know that I've looked to answer it. And we're on the same page, by the way. I was actually speaking, I was 100% educated and had I was thinking about anybody listening that hasn't had any therapy at all, or any education, and maybe just found them newly diagnosed. And I didn't want them to hear, well, you're accountable for your actions. And it's like, when you don't have those skills and tools under your belt, that can seem intimidating. So that's I was only speaking to individuals.
That's interesting too, because that's such a core point. Because oftentimes when family members or any kind of significant others in some way, they expect someone to be accountable without education. So, and that's a big problem. That why don't you just go? We hear that all the time in consults. That I don't understand why you're still doing that. We told you doesn't make any sense. How many times can we tell you? Or they're expecting someone to act as if they don't have a really serious psychiatric condition. So I think there's that too. There's people who haven't received education and what has to happen in their aha process, so to speak. And there's people who've had all the education in the world that understand everything and understand it better than any clinician or researcher could, and they still not making a personal change. So I think there are these different dimensions of this issue.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think it highlights aha moments can come at different stages of people's journeys, at different symptom severities. Because obviously, hear it Ethan talk, it's a beautiful story. And, like you said, Ethan, the hero's journey, there's a really good way to illustrate it. But I can imagine also people hearing this and thinking, oh no, do I have to get kicked out of my treatment before I have an aha moment? And Ethan's shaking his head at the minute, as in saying no, isn't it? Yeah, he's not shaking it yet.
Well, I would say you have to get kicked out of your idea of your own treatment, which is different. So
can you expand on that?
Well, I guess I used this analogy before, especially maybe on the OCD stories as well. But you could be at the gym all the time and not working out. You can be on your phone. In fact, one of the initiatives at NBI, we were actually just talking about this yesterday, is how we can help people have from the beginning an even better mindset of engagement with the program. Because you can, we know what absenteeism is. You don't just show up for your work or a program. But presenteeism is when you show up, but you're not really doing it. So I think you have to kick yourself out of that and kick yourself into gear to actually be in the program, because just showing up at the program isn't actually being in a program. And that's when we come to these kind of clinical decisions, or even saying to someone, hey, well, you're going to have to earn your way back into our program. People are always surprised to hear that, because they're thinking, hey, like sometimes the stance is, well, we're interviewing you and you should be lucky to have us. And we say, well, you're actually trying out for the team. You're trying out for the OCD fighting team. And while we're compassionate about it, we have to really understand when people are willing and able to do that and when they're not, and what kind of strategies are we going to do to actually modify it, which could sound pretty harsh, but as Ethan is pointing out, well, just everyone colluding that treatment is happening when it's not really happening, well, that's a real problem, because when we hear people have gone through program after program, did they really? It's just like people going after diet after diet or trainer after trainer. Did they really do it? Or school after school?
My whole purpose. I had an aha moment just now. Also, is there a team jacket? I was just wondering when that OCD fight.
But that's a good idea. I like that.
I think team jacket. I just think that would be inspiring. People would like that. At the end of the day, my advocacy, and remains so, has always been about helping individuals find an aha moment. I want people to, my story isn't about me. Honestly, it's never about me. It's about sharing a story of OCD, and the depths that it can take you, in the hopes that individuals listening, wherever they are in their journey, have their own aha moment of, I don't want it to get to that, or I don't want it to get that bad, or, oh, I didn't know it could get that bad, or I didn't know it could get that horrible. I didn't know you could be bedridden. I'm just doing little avoidances here and there, and I heard about OCD and I read about it online. Like, I want people to have their aha moment when they hear my story and go, I can do this. I can get better, or it doesn't have to get that bad. Really my whole story is about finding your own aha moment, and really, and that's the impetus, honestly, for why I share and why I want to share and won't stop sharing, until we also help treatment providers have aha moments, and insurance companies have aha moments, and legislation have aha moments about, like, this is an underdiagnosed estimated condition that needs help and treatment, and be on the forefront of research and all of those things. So I mean, there's lots of aha moments to go around. We're not in any shortage of distributing our aha moments. So let's have an aha moment giveaway and change the world.
Yeah, good point. And obviously the first time you came on the podcast, probably 2017, maybe.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. And the title of that was something along the lines of, if I can, then you can too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the crux. That's always the initial crux. I mean, it's grown and blossomed into a lot more other things, a lot of other things. But at the end of the day, when you boil it down, it's simply, it's possible. You can get better. You really, really can. And living a full life is possible. And what does that look like? And if I can play some small role in helping people have an aha moment in their journey earlier than I did, where it doesn't come to something that extreme, that's a huge win. But as John said, I can tee up, there's lots of aha moments, along the way. I mean, even just recognizing that there's something different and wanting to go online and finding out that, oh, maybe I do have this thing called obsessive compulsive disorder. What a massive aha moment, is recognizing there's a diagnosis there that you're like, that sounds like me. Maybe there's an explanation for the way I've been behaving, and then, everything that comes after.
That's a good point, actually. Like the amount of times I've heard that, well, either with my clients but mainly on the podcast, people say, yeah, the moment they Googled their symptoms and figured out OCD, or their doctor said it was OCD, or whatever it is, that is very much the first aha moment, right? But it's not I guess, and then there's the aha moment in treatment, which is what we're talking about. So, I mean, what John said there as well, like about the gym analogy. And so you were doing the work, even, at NBI, you were there a lot, you were doing tons of exposures, but I'm guessing there was something missing for you, as in that you weren't all in, or I don't know, because you were putting in the time. So credit to you there. But what was missing for you that wasn't enough?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I think we have this really frequent conversation about ERP, didn't work for me or doesn't work for me, exposure and response prevention. And, I don't think anybody's out to judge whether it does or it doesn't. I think there are some cases, that may in fact be, John may not agree with me, but may in fact be quote unquote treatment resistant, but what I do know is my own experience. And when John makes a gym analogy, I always picture myself in the gym. Like if the gym were my ERP, I picture myself in the gym. They would say, okay, go work out for 2 hours and we'll come see you in a minute. And I would do like, I frequent the gym so much, I have no clue what this exercise is called, but I would do some sort of bench press or something. I would put the weight on the smallest amount and I would push it and roll my eyes, and do that for a couple hours and then be done. And they go, how'd it went? I worked hard. I worked out the entire time. I think for me, I think you hit the nail on the head. Analogy aside, I think that I didn't have full buy-in. I don't think that I fully believed that the process could work. I don't think that I was willing to fully surrender to my biggest fears and being willing for them to happen in order to, make the gains that I needed to make. And I think that, ultimately, I was letting OCD get the best of me. So while I was going through the actions, there's this term, that we use all the time, white knuckling, kind of just gritting your teeth and bearing it, as opposed to really embracing the feelings and thoughts that are happening. I was very much doing that. But if you'd asked me at that time, I would have told you that I'm 100% engaged. I'm working my butt off. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. Like, what more do you want from me? I'm doing everything that you're asking me to do, and I'm not getting better. In retrospect, and it actually took me a few years in advocacy to realize actually, if you listen to my keynote, I was actually a staunch believer that ERP didn't work for me. Acceptance commitment therapy was the saving grace, which is still a brilliant treatment and therapy and really helped a lot of my own. I mean, it was made a magnificent difference, but only in my own recovery and talking with other advocates did I realize that I just wasn't in the right place to engage ERP in an effective way. And it wasn't that, I would never use the word fail. I didn't fail ERP. ERP didn't fail me. I just wasn't in a place to fully embrace it in a way that was effective. And so yeah, I think you use the right terms: buy-in, surrender, fully engage, and do the things that they were telling me. I had my guard up, and I didn't fully believe in what the experts were telling me. I didn't fully believe in my own ability. And P.S. I'm a product of my journey. I spent like the average 17 years from diagnosis to treatment, meeting with multiple clinicians in my lifetime, all telling me they could help me, and they didn't. So why was this any different? I always had that in the back of my head. Like, well, they're telling me they can help, but I've spent 17 years seeing 10 different psychiatrists and psychologists that all said they could help, and none of them did. So that was always in the back of my head. That's what I believe really kept me from succeeding much earlier, was finally letting go of that baggage and being like, what do I have to lose here? I'm not going to move forward if I keep holding on to this belief that no one can help me. So that was definitely a big part of my resistance.
Really good point.
So I'd like to comment on a few things, if that's okay, about what Ethan said. So whether about ERP working or not working, to me, it's almost like saying, do push-ups work or not work? The question it's not really about whether push-ups work, it's will you do the push-ups? I think when say people are refractory to ERP, perhaps we're saying they're refractory to actually having figured out how to help them get engaged in really doing ERP, doing it in a way that really makes a difference, doing it for long enough that makes a difference. So I think that's a very interesting way to look at it that is worth thinking about for some people. And two, I think, we could say use words like buy-in and things like that, and they're certainly very important. But I think there are certain underlying aspects that are just of maybe of a more clinical nature that are important to look at. And there's this thing called fluency error that I think about a lot. And it's like why you could have you think your kid is studying. They're saying, I'm studying, I'm doing my work. And it's obviously they're not studying in any way that makes sense to you. But what they found out with a lot of people who do stuff like that is they think that because they recognize the math, they've mastered the ability to produce the math on a test. So recognition, so it's called fluency error. I'm fluent in it. I've seen plus signs and minus signs before. I've seen this before. I can pass a test, but they're not doing the exercises for it. And I think sometimes that's the case with many of the people that we work with who are not making progress. They're like, I get it. I've heard this before. You can't tell me anything I didn't know. That's right. You can't say to a great basketball player, it's like you're telling them anything to D up, play defense. They're not really telling them anything that they don't know. It's a question of actually doing it to mastery level and remembering it in the circumstances. So it's not just intellectual. So it's a visceral. So it's really an overlearned. Good study is overlearn things in general. Excepting people who are rare geniuses. Really good studies put a lot of work into it. And maybe the rare geniuses, they put a lot of mental work into it, so it's just not obvious. People are not seeing the physical manifestations, but they're putting the work into it in a different way. So I just think those are just different angles on this issue that are important for people, when they're going through treatment. And I love what Ethan said about this aha moment needs to be spread around. And the last comment I want to have about, Ethan's wonderful exposition of what's happening is that there's many fractional aha moments, or you could just call them moments on the way to what I could call the big aha. And I think sometimes it's easy to say I had an aha moment, but it's not really an aha moment. And to understand the difference between an aha moment that's just kind of like, oh, I get this a little more now. I'm a little more ready. And the big one, which actually changes your life.
Is that what you were saying earlier, John, before we started recording about pseudo aha moments?
Right. That people, and I think that sometimes insight, and as I said, fluency error, which insight can be. You think you know something and you think you understand something, but imagine being a boxer and you watch some boxing matches. I think I get this now. Put me in there with, put me in there with, Tyson Fury. I think I get this. I've seen the tapes. I watched it, and it's a complete misapprehension of what skills are. It's almost like can't tell you how many kids I've spoken to who can play like a football game on video and feel perfectly prepared to actually coach a professional football team and couldn't understand the difference between their skills. And it's not to make fun of it or blame anyone for that. It's an error in thought processes, which, as we all know, we psychologists, especially of the CBT variety, think is very important to understand these biases, these mindsets that really underlie a lot of what we can colloquially call not having buy-in, not doing the work. But I think I just don't want to err in being judgmental about people who don't. There's often underlying reasons why they don't. And that's, again, I'll say a plug for doing neuropsychological testing. Sometimes a person could have a processing error. They could not be understanding things. They could have a very, very good intelligence, but not really. They could have kind of a social learning kind of condition or something. Something is preventing it. And if we can understand that, we just don't have to label someone, oh, well, they're going along with it. They're not going along with it. There's often reasons that we have to understand.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm pleased to announce my new aha moment, which is I don't have fluency error when it comes to physical prowess and athleticism. So just stating that out loud, I definitely can't do any of those things.
That's a good thing.
Yep. I need a controller in my hand. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
I had fluency error about my chess ability, actually with Katya's son, who's off to college the other day, because I look at chess a lot and I read about it. I thought I played chess better than I really do, but playing against someone who actually has played over 1,000 games recently, it really was a very evident difference in the actual performance of a skill rather than just thinking you get it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That is a really good point. Okay, so to both of you, my question here is, what are the catalysts for this moment to occur, for this aha moment? What, in both your experiences, what do you see needs to be in play or
I'll just trade off with Ethan on this one. I'll give one. Being there. You have to be there. You have to be in something. You have to be engaged on some level to have any possibility. So the first thing, as they say in life, is showing up. Or a family with a child, having them show up.
So I agree. First. I mean, I think that's probably the primary is and willingness. I think that's the next piece. You show up and then complete and total willingness for change. And I think that's really hard and asking a lot of individuals with this disorder that are probably very frustrated and upset. Depending where you are in your journey, if you're newly diagnosed and you find treatment right away, maybe you're more willing, maybe you're not. But I think a willingness to engage honestly and truthfully in the process will go a long way in seeing results. And then I was thinking, I'll defer to John. Teed it off to me. I mean, I'll defer to John. I actually, for many, I don't know that I talk about this often, but for many, many years, I wouldn't give myself credit for getting better because I was put in this position. And I was like, well, I was put in this position, which means that the win, if you call it that, wasn't mine. So people would ask me for many years after sharing my story and still do, well, what changed for you? How did you make the shift? And I would answer, I didn't. I couldn't figure it out. I was put in this position. Now, I later, after many, many conversations, discovered that even in that position, I still had a choice, right? So I still could have chosen one path over the other, and therefore it still was my choice. But to this day, I still, when people ask me, well, how do I choose earlier to engage in this process? I always struggle with that answer from a personal experience because I don't feel like I'm equipped to answer that. As I watched people get better and make those choices for themselves. And I couldn't do that until I was put in this position. Other than I'm just a product of my own journey and I need to give myself compassion for that. That it wasn't about me missing an opportunity or failing to find the aha moment or the shift in the moment. It was, I was a product of my circumstances. And after my journey, that's what it was always going to take for me to realize, let go of, we all have our own baggage and experiences. And there are inflection points in all of our lives. And I think that was mine. And I needed to let go of this notion that I somehow missed an opportunity or didn't do it right or failed. I failed in some way. But I always struggle. I like this talk because I always struggle with that moment when people are like, well, how can I find that sooner? And I love John's answer of like, be there, first of all. I immediately pictured my mom. Go ahead.
And also, I think what you're describing in an interesting way, and I've seen this many times, is that people are looking for the just right aha moment. They're looking to actually, in your case, it was this. There was a few notions there. One, that you had to kind of feel like that you did something yourself, like a kid saying, "I'll do it myself." That if other people were part of it, but it always takes a village. Anyone in recovery nobody has done it by themselves. And I think it's would be hubris to say, I've done this by myself. Because first of all, you had to live in a place where people, at a time, an era when people understood what OCD was. So that it rests on the contributions of many people. You had to be in some circumstance where there was, I found it hard when I was growing up to look up OCD on the internet, frankly, for obvious reasons. You maybe live in a time where you could get more access to information. Going back to Ethan and I, we hope one day we'll be infamous or famous, first person in the world who ever had OCD concept. What would you do then if you were the first person on earth? You're a cave person with OCD. Ethan knows I'm going to try to work into our idea about this whole concept into almost anything in the world, because I think we've had this conversation that's interesting to imagine having OCD before OCD was a concept. What would people make of it? What would you do? We may have this joke. What if you were afraid of touching a doorknob before even a doorknob was invented? I mean, and silly things like that. I mean, what would people make of it? So you have to be in a certain time. You have to live in a certain circumstance. You have to have access. You have to have other people have had aha moments that OCD, first of all, is a condition. That's a condition that's treatable. I always say that even when I started working in this field, most people did not think OCD was that prevalent, first of all, or that OCD really was treatable. And they had a vastly different model. They didn't have the neurobiological model of OCD that we have today. It was just getting to be near the point where there was even a medication, that was possibly available for it. But so does anyone ever do this alone?
That was going to be that was going to be my third point of Stu's question, which is timing meets opportunity. I think that is also a huge piece of an aha moment. I mean, that was in my case, there was an opportunity and timing, and I think it takes that. But I think I couldn't have done that. I think, John, you stumbled on sort of like a Karate Kid rule number one, and then rule number two, follow rule number one. But the idea, like, I couldn't have done the things I did without being there, eventually finding my way there, and then being there. So I love that as sort of a baseline, but yeah, I think
luck. Yeah, there's luck involved too. What if you don't live in an area where there's somebody who actually does evidence-based treatment of OCD? What if you happen to walk into the office of somebody who actually doesn't agree with evidence-based OCD or has very little experience with it, or has actually just say they're an OCD expert when they really haven't studied this, so that there's some happenstance, unfortunately, still very involved in this. There are standards of care and there are best practices, but I don't think we have the best practice in getting people to follow best practices.
No, good point. Good point on that. Yeah, I think because I can imagine people listening to this and being like, well, I haven't had an aha moment yet. Like, when's my time? I need one. Da, 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 da. And I guess, what you're saying, since the dawn of time, in some way, it's all been building to this moment for OCD, right? And as time goes on, more and more gets piled on that increases the chances that more and more people will have aha moments quicker, into their processes and treatments. And
yeah, and I'd like to mention that we don't know if an aha moment is necessary to make a change. Yeah, and you act as if you're having an aha moment, which is what I recommend to people who are not. Just act like someone, imagine what an aha moment would be, and act like you've had that aha moment. that for all we know, that works equally as well as, to get back to Ethan's point, the aha moment doesn't have to be naturalistic. But often people with OCD have this thing that it has to be their mind, their will, their process creating it. But who says that that's the case?
I think, and I agree.
Go for it.
Go ahead, Stuart. No, go ahead.
No, you go.
I think that for me, the aha moment was always romanticized in cinema. And I won't do the example because this is a podcast. But I think, when you watch movies and the lead character has that moment where they suddenly realize they love the girl, or they have that moment where they solve the problem, and the music swells and they get this look on their face, and then everything changes. I think I believe that was what was going to happen for me, is like one day it was just going to strike me and the music would swell and everything would change. And I was waiting for that. And I think, unromanticizing that moment is helpful in understanding that, it's probably not going to work like that. But I agree with John. I agree with John, and I agree with what you said, Stu. This is very much not about, have you had your aha moment? You need to wait for your aha moment, or if you're in treatment or therapy or struggling or just diagnosed, that this is a pivotal piece of getting better and finding, access to care and getting better. This is really about, under the guise of aha moment, this is really about, if I have access to care or access to knowledge, how can I use that to get better? And how can I shift my brain into fully surrendering to the process of exposure and response prevention in an effort to regain my life? For me, at least, that's what I think this conversation is really about. So we call it an aha moment or shift point or a pivot or whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, if you're struggling, if you've got, your fixed belief and you're terrified, whatever it is, OCD is so terribly convincing, and it still tricks me all the time, So what is it that we have to do to be able to call OCD out for what it is, and then make value-driven decisions that move in the direction of a meaningful full life? And that's really what we're talking about, is how do I get those skills? How do I get those tools? And how do I have the insight in the moment to be able to implement those? And that insight in the moment to be able to make those decisions, that's really the aha moments. I had an aha moment literally this morning. On Saturday, I had a really bad vertigo attack. And I've started getting these as I've gotten older. And since the beginning, since my OCD presented itself, I've had a fear of dizziness. That's always been my thing. My thing's always been about my head. And so I've noticed, since I had my vertigo, since got better, maybe Monday or Tuesday, I've noticed that I've had a slight fear of pretty much any time I move my head. I anticipate, well, if I turn my head, am I going to get vertigo? If I sit up, am I going to get vertigo? And I have these moments of pause where I'm like, I feel like, am I developing a fear of moving around and things like that? And as I got up today to get dressed to jump on here, I was speaking to my fiance, Katie, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to treat this like OCD. Like, I need to welcome the vertigo. Like, I hope that if I turn my head, like, yeah, maybe it'll spin and I'll have to deal with that. And maybe I'll feel loopy or whatever. And it's like, how did I not think of that? Like, this is what I'm trained in. This, I'm trained in this kung fu of sure, embracing it. And if it happens, I'll deal with it then. And in the meantime, if I turned my head just now and it didn't happen, great. What a win. That's awesome. And that's scary. But that was such a lovely, small, little aha moment, reminding myself of it's more of an, oh yeah moment, right? It's more of a, right, oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do with this. I already had the aha moment of learning it, and now I'm just reminding myself to utilize those skills and tools. But I think that's, a good example of having that insight in the moment to be able to move forward in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So that gets to a couple of things that I think are really important. One is that I think we underestimate how much sensory functioning is symptomatic in OCD and intersects with OCD. So you give a great example, and this is something, I was on a panel at the recent OCD conference in San Francisco about sensory issues, in the intersection of sensory motor issues with OCD. And I'm glad you brought that up, because sometimes people don't take that leap to recognize that that's just part of the whole process. And the other comment I wanted to make is that I know who has aha moments very, very quickly, and that is OCD. If I may kind of make OCD into a thing, OCD gets aha moments very, very quickly and sustains them for a very long period of time. You could say every time you do an avoidance or a compulsion, OCD is having the OCD brain is having an aha moment. And part of aha moments is stopping OCD from having an aha moment. Now, I don't know if that's just too loopy to think about, but
stopping or embracing.
Well, embracing is stopping. When you think about OCD, embracing is actually the recipe for preventing OCD from doing anything, from having an aha moment. Because unlike the external world where you physically stop something, in the internal world, you actually see something from happening by non-attendance and radical acceptance. And I think
that's such a great point. I think that's a great point about OCD. It is. It's like an aha machine. I mean, anytime it pokes a hole in a logic or something that you finally feel comfortable about, it's out ahaing you. I think that's really interesting to think about.
And I think looking at the mechanism of it, we're all people and have our humanistic qualities, but it is built on a machine. And I don't know how people are going to feel about that. But I think actually understanding the machine-like, computer-like aspects of OCD, that's why it's so inexorable. That's why it's so difficult to deal with, because it's machine learning at a certain level.
So be Neo in your own OCD journey. Be the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Rage against the machines.
There is something to that about understanding the neuropsychology of your brain and how it operates and works. As soon as you can say, this is what's going on right now in scientific terms, it gives you that distance, starts to give you that distance from the content, and so then you don't get pulled in as easily. And but going back to what we were saying about who needs an aha moment, I think what came to me is I don't think everyone needs it, because in compassion focused therapy, there's something called fears, blocks, and resistances. So we'll think about when someone is resistant or fearful of compassion, you have to work on those fears, blocks, and resistances before doing any CFT work, because it's just not going to work. If they think compassion's for weak people, or it's soft, airy fairy, or it's not evidence based, it doesn't work, whatever it is, you need to navigate those. So those people need an aha moment in compassion, but in terms of not everyone that does CFT work needs that aha moment. They're ready to go. Yeah, I'm on board with compassion. Like, I get it. And that's not, and it's not to say, Ethan wasn't strong enough or anything like that, or anyone that's resistant to compassion isn't strong enough or anything like that. We're all a product of various life circumstances, upbringing, genetics, all of that stuff. And for some of us, we're going to have roadblocks in various areas and various parts of treatment. And for those people, that's when an aha moment's probably needed. And for others, can come into therapy, start ERP, and there's no aha needed. Yeah.
That resonates so heavily with me. I think my late term aha moment was around self-compassion, when I was struggling again in 2018, 2019, and realized and discovered and I recently got a diagnosis of bipolar, and learned that I was not a practicer of self-compassion. And that, in fact, not only did I not practice it, but I did think it was weak. And for me, I've discovered, and still continue to discover, that it's like learning Japanese backwards for me. I think I'll be a lifelong student and a beginner of it, as I strive to seek self-compassion in my own life every day. My brain is definitely not hardwired for self-compassion. So I resonate highly with that, but in that moment, but that also impacted right. It was an aha moment in a different area, but totally impacted the rest of my life and my OCD and other diagnoses, and just how I approached everything. So I resonate very closely with that too.
Yeah. And it speaks to a really big philosophical point about maybe what I would call, among the big philosophical ahas, is which is so hard for people with OCD in general, maybe not everybody, but just understanding so much of life is beyond our control. So much of the machine of our bodies is beyond our control. So much of our circumstances. And I think that's one of the most important things to accept. And that's really why we should be compassionate, not should, but why that makes sense, because here we are in a world where so many things are beyond us. Why would we blame ourselves for something trying to control? Because it's a fundamental error in thinking that something that can't be controlled can be controlled, and that there's a conflation of preference. If I prefer it to be this way, that it should be this way, which also goes into the cognitive bias of emotional reasoning, because I think it, because I feel it, so that it is so. And again, just as a psychologist, I think looking at decoding the structure of all of these things is very, very important. It just gives an additional tool, an additional way of kind of really being very specific about what you're trying to accomplish in therapy.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah, so, I want to reiterate as we're closing up the hour. Sorry, Stu. I just want to reiterate that, like, I love what you said, Stu, also about, not everyone requires an aha moment. And I think this conversation, and John and I did this talk, or a talk on aha moments at the conference as well, was birthed out of individuals coming up to me and going, I'm in treatment, I'm not seeing progress, what am I doing wrong? Right. And so I just want to make that clear. And I agree with John and you as well, Stu, that, no, you may be jump in and willing and that is your journey. But this conversation definitely came from the question of, I know, like John said, I get it. I know it. I know the game plan. I know what every move to make is. But I when I get on the court, I throw air balls every time. What am I doing incorrectly? And that's really where this manifested from, this conversation. So for people out there that this may resonate with, I think, perhaps an aha moment is hopefully, in your future to help that shift and that change. But you definitely don't need one to succeed in therapy, for sure.
Yeah, good point. And your talk at the ISTF conference, is that recorded, and can people access that anywhere?
No, that's why we're recreating it here.
Okay, good. I'm honored.
Stuart, the only one, he gets the access, the full access, all access pass. Yeah. And in some ways, this is actually better because we're diving into things that we probably didn't get to before. So I really enjoy this conversation.
Yeah. The ISTF was the dress rehearsal, and this is game time. This is Wimbledon, full stadium, Ed Sheeran style. Yeah. No, we're here.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. All right, brilliant. So I guess, is there anything either of you want to say on aha moments before we close up?
Well, I think Ethan really made a fantastic point, and you've made fantastic points as well, that it's nice to have an aha moment, but it's not necessary. You don't have to have it in a certain way. And by the way, it's really kind of meta. And you can have an aha moment about not needing an aha moment, which is really a very behavioral way to think. There's when you really take a deep dive into these concepts without going down a rabbit hole of this concept, an aha moment could be even that, hey, I don't need an aha moment to actually go on with my day. I just need to make a decision. I need to have the frustration tolerance to do it. I need to have the skill to do it. I need to have the understanding to do it. Because as Ethan has said, has really focused in on that, to live your best life, a full life, that's what's necessary to do. And maybe that's the biggest aha moment of all, is that whatever it is, whatever your mind gives you, whatever life gives you, to be persevering and to work toward a good life for yourself, however you define it.
Good point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what I said before about, not needing one is I think maybe the best piece to leave on, in terms of, if you're in that place. I think the only other thing I want to add is I truly, truly believe that all our aha moments are within ourselves already. It's nothing we need externally. I think they're all internally. They're all there waiting for us to penetrate and grab and activate. It's that innate, and that truly remarkable and amazing inner strength that everyone with OCD and related disorders that I've ever met at every conference, thousands and thousands of people have. And I think finding that, it can be tricky. Sometimes it's hidden a little bit more. If you'd have asked me, if I was convinced that OCD was going to kill me, I was absolutely convinced. I found inner strength that I didn't know I had. And if you asked me now if I could do it again, I would say there's no way. So I think it's important to recognize that, you're really accessing something that's already inside of you. It's not something you need to find externally or go buy or, or look for, that it's hidden in the four corners of the earth. It's really just in you. And realizing that you just have to sort of shovel off the snow and find that flower to pick and use is, I think, a really beautiful notion, and true, is that you already have the power. It's the great, my favorite movie, Spaceballs, which is hilarious, but like, when he loses the ring, and Yogurt says, this is such a bad reference, but anyway, I love Spaceballs. One of my favorite movies. And Yogurt says, you don't need the ring. The Schwartz was within you the entire time. You can do it, Lone Star. It's in you. It's like the Schwartz is in all of us. That's the reality, is we can defeat OCD with the Schwartz, which is in us. We don't need a ring. So that's my parting thought. And we'll now have to put an asterisk by the title of this podcast and warn people there's a weird Spaceballs reference. So
yeah, well, I'll have to go check that out. It rings a bell. I swear. I mean, maybe I haven't seen it. I feel like I have, but maybe I haven't. I'll check it out. So look, thank you so much to both of you for your time on this. I'm sure it's going to help people if they need an aha moment. Hopefully it will help them in that journey or process. Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stuart.
Giving us this chance to speak about something that we think is such an important topic.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. And thank you to our Patreons who helped make this episode possible. And if you would like to find out more about Patreon and the rewards and benefits, then there will be a link in the episode description. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us with a one-time tip/donation, please go to theocdstories.com/support. All tips, no matter how large or small, are greatly appreciated. Please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. So thank you to NBI for supporting our work, and if you would like to find out more about their intensive outpatient services or the ranch, head to nbiwestern.com, or the link will be in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.